Before we start this video, a large thank you to Artem, Matt, and the Schemic for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And, as always, a massive thank you to Halo Burner and Ryan Bellin for their immense support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely appreciated, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, and today we're going to get our renderers and game objects using some editor functionality. So, create a new folder and call it editor in your assets folder, just like this. And this is where our editor scripts are going to be contained. And we're just going to make one right now. And we're going to name it World Location Renderer Manager Editor. So, as the name suggests, it's going to be an editor script for the World Location Renderer Manager. So what does an editor script do? Well, basically, we can use this to change how the editor looks when we highlight something with that script on it. So, I'm going to delete my start and update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. And I'm going to come up here and say using Unity Editor, like so. I'm going to make this derived from editor. And then we're going to come just above the public class here. And we're going to say custom editor, brackets, type of, brackets, and then the script that we want to influence, which is going to be World Location Renderer Manager. Then we're going to say override on inspector GUI. And if I hover over this, you can see implement this function to make a custom inspector. Cool. Next, let's say World Location Renderer Manager. And then we're going to say World Location Renderer is equal to target as World Location Renderer Manager. So what's target? If we hover over, this is the object being inspected. So when we click on the World Location Renderer Manager in our inspector, it's going to highlight, trigger this, and now we can do some functionality. We're going to say if GUI layout.button find and disable renderers, and then what we can do is actually call that function from our World Location Renderer Manager by using this variable up here, World Location Renderer. So we're just going to say World Location Renderer dot find all mesh renderers. So this is going to create a button inside the inspector, and the button is going to basically toggle this function or call the functionality. So then we'll make one for the root game objects as well, and we'll call find all root game objects. All right, cool, very good. Now down under here, we're going to do one for just enable, and we'll say toggle all mesh renderers true. And then we can do one for enabling the game objects as well. So now wherever you put this script in your game, or rather in the engine, if you hover over it, you should have these 4 buttons appear now if it's highlighted in your inspector after you save this. Okay, lastly, we're going to come in here and say editor utility.setDirty. We're going to pass the World Location Renderer. Why are we doing this? What does this do? Well, basically, I'll put a comment here. If you make any changes in your scene from a script, so the functionality from the inspector, for example, if you call one of these here, like toggle all mesh renders, the scene actually doesn't register the change. So if you save the scene and leave, nothing will happen, and it will revert back to the time before you call this function. But if we call this flag here for editor utility.setDirty, this basically flags the object in the scene as dirty, which means there's been a change. So when you save, any changes made by functionality from the inspector will actually save as well. So we're going to use this again at another point when we actually find all and activate all at the same time via something called light bake mode and game mode, but I'll get to that in a moment. Let's make another editor script called World Location Manager Editor. And as the name suggests, this is going to be an editor script for our World Location Manager. Let's drop in our namespace, delete the start and update functionality. And it's going to be much the same starting out. Just come up here and say using Unity Editor, and then make it derive from editor. And if you want, you can go ahead and yoink this custom editor here and then paste it here. Just change the name to World Location Manager instead of World Location Render Manager. And then inside here, we're going to override again on inspector GUI. So we're going to make 2 functions here. They don't exist yet, so I'm just going to set this up and then we'll get to that in a moment. So we're going to call the World Location Manager as the variable here. And we're going to say World Location Manager is equal to target as World Location Manager. All right, so let's make some pseudocode in the form of comments. What we want to do is make something called a light bake mode, and that's going to enable all mesh renders and game objects for you for when you want to bake your lighting or make changes to the world so you can see where everything is. But then game mode, where it disables everything, and we let the game enable what is required as you load into your scenes using the logic we made in previous episodes. All right, straightforward enough. So let's go to our World Location Manager, and then we can make these 2 functions. We're going to have one toggle light bake mode, And then we'll have toggle game mode. So the idea is you're going to click toggle light bake mode whenever you're actually making your world, making changes, baking lighting, where you need to see where everything is in your scene view. But then before you do your build, you're always going to click toggle game mode, and this will disable everything, and again, let the game enable things as you need them to be enabled. So under toggle light bake mode, we're going to make an array of world location render managers. And again, these two functions will only be called when you're in the engine. They'll never be called from the game while the game is running. This is just for you as a developer to make your life easier. So we're going to say location renders is equal to find objects by type, and then we're going to do a world location render manager, and we're going to say object sort mode is equal to none. So it's going to be find objects sort mode dot none. All right, cool. Then when you have the array, we're going to do a for loop, and we're going to make sure there's no null enters. There should not be anyway, but we're just going to check anyway. So we're going to iterate through this location renderers. We're going to say if location renders I is equal to null, simply continue. Otherwise, we're going to basically get all of the game objects and mesh renders, and then we're going to enable them all. So we're going to do find all mesh renders and find all game objects, which will find them all and disable them all. And then we're going to do toggle all mesh renders true and toggle all game objects true. So location renders I dot toggle mesh renders true. All right, cool. So now when we're done that, we can just come down here and we can do this little trick. I'm going to copy this first and paste it because toggle game mode is identical, except we're disabling them instead of enabling them. So change the true to false. But what you want to do is use that editor utility thing I was saying before. Otherwise, any of these changes you do when you go to leave the scene won't actually save. So to do that, we're just going to do an if statement here, but we're going to put the number sign first. And we're going to say if unity all caps underscore editor, just like that. Then we want to run this editor utility dot set 30. Then we can pass this. So why are we making this weird looking if statement here? Then we're going to say number sign end if. Well, if you go to build your game, it's likely going to give you an error when it tries to get to this part of the code. But this makes it so this code is only checked and basically compiled and ran within this if statement if you are actually in the editor. So this is completely ignored and built to the game. Make sure you have that there. Otherwise, you're probably going to get a build error if you try to build it. Now, back over on our world location manager editor, we can just basically implement these buttons now. So create two buttons, one for toggle light bake mode and one for toggle your game mode. So it's the same as our previous editor script. We're going to say if GUI layout.button, and then we put the name of the button we want and we call the function we want. So we can do world location manager dot toggle light bake mode, and then we got world location manager down here dot toggle game mode. And then just whatever you want to say on the button. I'm just going to say toggle game mode and toggle light bake mode. So this is going to make it so when you just hit either of these buttons as you need, it's going to not only enable and disable all of the renderers and game objects, but it's also going to find every single renderer and root game object in your scene. So let's make a prefab for the world renderer, or rather world location renderer manager. I'm going to make an empty game object, reset its transform, and add this world location renderer manager script to it. I'm going to go to my prefabs and drop that in right there. Again, make sure I reset its transform. Cool. Now let's go into our world and let's drag in every scene. So go to my world scene, save that, sure. And then I'm going to go and highlight every single scene I have in my game and drag them in. Now what I want to do, and I won't make you watch me do this, but I'm going to take this world location render manager prefab we just made, and I'm going to put it at the top of every single scene that is going to be loaded into my world that has its own renderers and game objects. Anything that you want to be affected by this, basically, drag this in. So I'm just going to put it up here like that. And then this next scene just like this. And this next scene like this. And then I'll snap real back when I'm done in a second. Okay, so now that I have them all in, let's go over here. And you can see I have them all in every scene. If you see this little star symbol, by the way, see how it goes away? That means that there's been a change in the scene, like I've touched something. So now I can save it, and it will go away until I touch it again. So if I go up here, and if I go to World Location Manager, watch what happens when I click Toggle Game Mode. Everything disappears, and you'll notice every single scene here has a little star icon. They've been changed. You can see all the mesh renders and root objects have been populated automatically, and everything is where it needs to be. So if I go up here now and toggle Light Bake Mode, it all comes back. And you can just flick back and forth as you need. Every time you go to actually run your game, make sure you click Toggle Game Mode, and we can save it. And now I'll just jump into the main menu and show you. I popped in the game here. You can see the world loaded as much as it needed to. Everything that is relevant to my player's current location has been loaded. There you have it. You have a way to load in complex scenes piece by piece, and it should be a lot easier on your system. Now, in the final video, I will go over how I do light baking, and I use adaptive probe volumes for my light probes. If you have a pretty reasonably sized game, there's still a lot more things you can do for minor optimizations. An example of some of the things I do in my project is to basically disable the animators of characters that aren't actually within the camera's view, disable their ability to actually have any shadows rendered on them if they're not in the camera's view, and so on. If that's something that interests you, I can probably go over that in the random episode. Just let me know below. If not, I will see you guys next week. Have a very lovely weekend. A very large thank you to my patrons for keeping my lights on. Thank you to the people who take the time to like, leave a comment, and share the series via word of mouth.